Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Chris Schleich, Engineering Manager with Enterprise Automation, a CSIA certified system integrator based in Irvine, California. Chris graduated from UC Davis with a degree in mechanical engineering and targeted controls engineering from the start. He taught himself PLC programming with simulator software, which led to his first job at Hinz Automation. His manager at Hinz is a current owner at Enterprise. Through incessant self-learning and leadership traits, his responsibilities expanded into sales, project management, recruiting, and staff management. In 2016, Enterprise's executives submitted a Rising Star nomination on his behalf. Chris now focuses on developing others through training curriculums, career development, and cultural reinforcement. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Sounds so formal.
I'm trying to be professional. Work with me. So why don't you start by explaining why you chose a career in control system integration?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people's stories over the years, and I've been surprised how many people fall into it. They were working a job in a plant or something like that, and hey, there's some little box in the corner that someone had to touch to make changes. I've heard mostly stories about that, whereas I knew probably by the time I'm middle of college that that's the industry I wanted to go into. My aha moment was I was, probably halfway through school and doing an internship in a machine shop, and I was grinding posts, painting things, running a few machines, and I saw the other engineers put together custom machinery, and it was test equipment. And when they'd eventually go hit a start button, and I would see this machine come to life and things move and counters and lights come on, and I just knew, what is all that wiring? What is making it do this? And I think my mechanical design days were over once I saw that. So I targeted the industry.
I would say people would consider you lucky for finding something that really, turned your crank like that early. That's a gift. So when you're trying to describe to lay people what you do, how do you do that? Like, what's your elevator pitch?
Well, I've fumbled that quite a few times, but I do a lot of recruiting for the company now, particularly for the engineers, and so I've reflected a lot, and kind of where my strength lies when it comes to recruiting is I seem to be able to tap what I felt like back at that age with my better understanding of what our company does and what it does for the world, and I'm able to kind of join those together. And so I'll give you an example, and you don't have to be an engineer for this example, but Lisa, if you and I, standing anywhere, but let's use today's example on the podcast, look at anything in our visual view, industrial automation was involved. And I don't know exactly your space, but mine, I have a microphone next to me. I have a laptop in front of me. I have window panes. My neighbor has solar panels on the roof. I have a Coke Zero over here, the best product known to man, a USB stick, the shirt on my back, that printer up there. Industrial automation was involved in all that. And the strange part is 99% of the public really doesn't realize that. And so I kind of, going back to the question, I might choose one of those examples like your car. That was made in a factory, right? Everyone generally gets that. And so I say what I do, what companies like Enterprise Automation do, is we are the neurosurgeons for those factories. We essentially are implementing the brains and the nervous system that bring that entire factory to life, which produces all these consumer goods. And I gave a lot of product examples, but there's safe, clean drinking water coming from our house, or coming to all our houses, our businesses. There's textile plants. The electricity that comes to our house gets generated and transported somewhere. I mean, this industrial automation concept in building systems literally applies to anything within view that's human made.
That's a nice way of putting it. So switching to enterprise automation, how did the company begin and how has it evolved?
Yeah, so it began in, I believe, 1998. Actually, that's what I remember from our proposals. And it was founded by an engineer, Josh Riley and Scott Pickford. The current owners bought it from that person in 2005. And it was very mom and popish before, and they just had a grander vision of making a more formal, larger company that got more specialized. And I was employee number 4 in 2007. And we are about to fill our current building at 35 come July. That's a basic evolution. And I'd say the company with the 4 of us started with similar working styles. And that's why we all came together. It's because, hey, if we're going to spend 40, 50 hours doing this a week, why don't we do it how we like to do it? That's kind of the vision set by Scott to me originally. And that was just the seed for the current culture.
What challenges are your customers facing right now? It's sort of a strange time. We're filming this March 31st, 2020. A lot of us are just now coming to terms with some of the safer at home messaging and learning how to work remotely. And I'm sure there's supply chain disruption. I mean, it's just a really odd, surreal time. So how does that translate into challenges your customers are facing?
Yeah, my answer is enterprise automation specific. We largely do water, wastewater. It's not our only industry, but it's the one we've had most often. And right now, we're still taking showers, we're still drinking water. So those clients have to continue to produce. We have wastewater clients too. Those plants don't shut off. They never do. So I don't have a COVID specific answer for that industry. But when you and I originally talked about this question, I think my broader answer to what challenges they face are water, wastewater agencies are largely staffed with civil engineers, operators, water quality specialists. They conceptually understand what a control system is, but really don't have the intricate knowledge to know how to define the requirements to produce a good control system that serves them. And so the challenges we see quite a lot are agencies where their control systems are controlling them, whether it's they're being outdated or they don't work right. A lot of these systems are built using construction management workflows. So putting out bids, getting a general contractor to build a system, they'll sub out the integration. And by that point, the incentives for the long-term operation for the end user are several layers removed from the contracted work. A lot of our work is actually starting with rehabilitation projects for water, wastewater clients. We'll get a bit of greenfield here and there, or new plants, if you will. Often when people go do that, they're still using the public bid mechanism. And our sweet spot's kind of helping clients who don't want to build things that way anymore.
If we can assume that the water supply is safe during this pandemic, why are so many people going crazy and buying huge amounts of water?
I'll tell you why. I have a personal example. So my mother-in-law lives with me, and she told us a story 2 or 3 weeks ago. She went to Albertsons, and this is when the panic buying was starting, and she just saw people rushing over to get the bottled water. We don't use bottled water here in our house, but she bought one just because she saw the rush, and I think that sums it all up right there. I mean, she was laughing about it, but really, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I have to say one of the nice benefits and byproducts of working for CSIA is getting to have conversations with engineers because it's very soothing. Like if I'm feeling a panic about the water supply, I just talk to a couple of guys who do water and wastewater work and they're like, you're fine. And then I feel so much better. It's a nice job.
This last year or two, I took water operations course at a local JC. So this is what a water wastewater treatment operator would take, and before taking a test to get certified, which you have to be, at least in California state, actually every state per EPA guidelines. And yeah, I did water control systems, but it wasn't until I saw that curriculum from the operator viewpoint with the regulations that I understood why a water professional would tell you something like that. United States standards and our methods are very robust and evolved, and I think I understand that a lot better. So yeah, I personally feel no concern about our water supply.
With so many people working from home, canceling in-person meetings and events, and spending more and more time online, it's more important than ever that your digital presence is top-notch and that you find creative ways to maximize your marketing resources and get in front of your customers. The Industrial Automation Exchange and the Talking Industrial Automation podcast are the perfect places to start. The Exchange offers upgrades, packages, and display opportunities to ensure your brand is top of mind during your customers' complicated, research-based buying journey. The Talking Industrial Automation podcast can also help because now you can place your 60-second spot into the podcast. It's super easy and a unique way to reach new audiences. To learn more about the packages and advertising opportunities or how to become a podcast sponsor, contact me, Lisa Richter, at industrydir@controlsys.org. Let's face it, it's a digital world out there, and you need to make sure your company doesn't get left behind. Let the Exchange and podcast go to work for you. So you mentioned, your work with this water and wastewater, and I was on the phone with another system integrator recently who in this space, and he said the pandemic has meant an increase in business for him. He's super busy. He was kind of saying it sheepishly. Is that the same with enterprise? Are you seeing an increase in work? How otherwise has the pandemic impacted your business or what you're going to do going forward for 2020?
Yeah, I'll probably take this in a couple parts. So I will start with the initial question, and we haven't seen an uptick of business, but we have our business right now is pretty stable. And I think a major factor of that is, well, a couple things. It's being water, wastewater, which also insulated us from the 2008 crash. We grew 20% in that period, and largely because we were in that sector. We had a little bit of manufacturing, and that market completely shut down for a couple of years for the clients we served. But water, wastewater was going strong. We haven't. Enterprise automation hasn't seen an uptick, but I have heard stories where the pandemic has opened some service opportunities. These plants still have to be maintained. People have to troubleshoot them, and all agencies will typically augment their own staff with specialists. So there is opportunity there, and we have created a response letter, and we believe we're an essential business based on the fact that we serve clearly essential businesses. So it is a service opportunity. And then two, how are we planning for the rest of 2020? We started about a week or two ago doing a full sweep of our clients and being sure that we reach out to them. Enterprise automation we've crafted a working policy and strategy in these times and guidelines with federal, state, and county guidelines as they're posted. And but we want to make sure when the service work we are continuing to do, meet our clients how they're addressing this issue. So our project managers reached out to all our clients, asked them questions. What's your policy? Are your projects continuing? What level of service do you expect? How are you handling meetings? Because there's service work. There's also design work for ongoing projects. So we really worked to establish our base that way. And then we're still trying to get a feel for what, if any, work's going to be pushed out, mainly from missed workshops together. But so far, that's pretty stable.
So you mentioned this emphasis on communicating with clients. What else is unique about how you approach a project?
This is another answer that I've crafted a bit through recruiting and trying to describe. One thing interesting about our industry, I forgot to say earlier, is it's not taught in schools. So there's not often a common language to talk to either a layperson or even engineers. Especially the schools we recruit out of, a lot of University of California schools, there's really no industrial automation programs. Creates a gap I have to bridge to say it's kind of like your programming course, but kind of not really. So to that point, I think what makes enterprise automation different is we bring engineering discipline to control system projects. It might sound strange to highlight, but from what I can tell in the circles I've run in for 18 years, it seems unique in our industry. So I kind of use an example of a bridge when I'm talking to students, at least. If, Lisa, if you and I are going to go build a bridge outside of here at our house, we're going to have to use licensed PEs to do a design. When we start constructing it, there's going to be state inspectors all over the place, making sure codes are met. And if we get a pylon wrong or something like that, we can visually tell, hey, something's not adding up with this bridge. And I argue the same kind of engineering methodology of setting requirements, creating a design that meets those requirements, and then having a way to confirm what you've built is on track. It applies to industrial automation also. People tend to think of it as a virtual space where, you just type on your keyboard, oh, I got something wrong. I'll just bring in the coder, give him a couple hours. He'll completely redo the plant. And it just doesn't work that way. We're setting fairly complex, for a large plant anyway, for fairly complex architectures and structures to the logic and what it does. So to wrap it up, I think what EA does different is we bring an engineering methodology to this world, to this work. Define requirements. I think one thing we do differently is we know how to have that conversation to help to identify clients that don't know how to set requirements and then get them involved to help them set requirements. They'll say, you guys are the code geeks, you just decide, and that's really not in their best interest long term. While we don't need to drag them into the nitty-gritty details, we do need to translate the technical options of a control system into operations terms so they can make better informed decisions for themselves long term. And we've gotten pretty good at doing that over the years. And then, just having discipline to build what we say we're going to and test. And the motto kind of sums it up. Nothing leaves enterprise untested. That sets us apart too.
How much of your business is repeat? And of that repeat business, why do they return?
Depends on year to year, but it's very high. I'd say anywhere from 70 to 90%, which is really more driven by how many new clients we're getting, because most clients we serve end up being long-term clients. And usually we're selecting jobs based on that criteria. And why do they return? I'll sum it up with a quote from one of the clients gave me. Personally, we were going out to dinner. I have never seen a firm that has their stuff together more than EA. And he didn't use the word stuff.
I was going to say, did you clean that up? It's the G-rated version.
And then there was another one I got from calling a local senior water engineer at one of the districts we serve. And I kind of do this once in a while just to check. The first quote just came off the cuff. The second one was part of me checking in on how EA is serving them. And she said, EA is the only contractor that I don't have to manage. In fact, you're actually helping me keep track on top of my other contractors, which is kind of interesting as a control system integrator, because when you get in a project, say a new plant's being built or even one that's being rehabilitated, usually there'll be mechanical, electrical, plumbing people involved. And because the control system person has to have that whole system intact before they can really do their part, you kind of and that how the whole facility works, you kind of almost accidentally become the person with the best big picture understanding of where the real status of the project is. And then, just to wrap it up, people return because we're reliable. Our solutions work immediately. We manage risk incessantly. We hit our deadlines and we listen to what they want. And to make that all even easier, we make life easy for them.
I've been working with associations for my whole career, and I can honestly say I have never experienced a group of business professionals so willing to share, collaborate, and support one another as the CSIA community. During these unprecedented times, having a group of peers to turn to is invaluable. Whether the current climate means your phone is ringing off the hook or you're chewing your nails to the quick, now is the time to invest in your company, yourself, and this unique community that has a culture of sharing baked into its DNA. You'll also have access to member benefits such as best practices, insurance and legal programs, marketing tools, professional development opportunities, and so much more. To find out how you can join and contribute to this one-of-a-kind organization, visit www.controlsys.org/member-services. Look, I know these are some crazy times, but the CSIA community is ready to be by your side. All you have to do is join us. Okay, so without naming names, unless you want to or allowed to, tell us about a project that was very challenging and what you did to solve the customer's problem.
I'll use a personal example for this. So back when I started enterprise automation, I was put on a controller upgrade project for a nitric acid plant up in the Central Valley. And this plant ultimately, the acid they made was used in fertilizer derivatives. Local farmers come buy liquid fertilizer by the truckful to put on their crops. And this plant was built late 60s. It's the same wiring. They've been through a few different control systems over the years. It was originally pneumatic with standalone controllers. Somewhere in the 80s and 90s, they introduced digital controllers, and then they were on their second or third iteration of that by the time EA hit the scene. Basically, when we got there, the operators and engineers they kind of almost had a superstition about touching control cabinets or anything with wires in it, because people opened the doors and the plant would shut down just from bumping a wire.
Oh my goodness.
And so basically the entire plant was in that state. And they brought us in just to work on the HMI because we were specialists in their brand. But I mean, it was pretty quick to see that, upgrading the controller, just replacing the PLC for a newer one was not going to be the biggest value add for them. And they pretty much would only give us 10 to 15 down days at a time in their plant turnarounds in October. And they wanted the whole plant converted. And it was basically 40 years of the original wiring plus basically a culture of get it done as fast as possible to get the plant running. And so, wires going this way, that way, they're unlabeled. So to do our conversion, it was a giant puzzle. You're only given 10, 15 days a year to convert these things. And in the end, it took 5 or 6 years of phased projects, but ultimately what we did was we looked at their weakest points or what would most jeopardize their plant running, keeping their plant running. And we kind of just attacked things in that order. So we dealt with software and server obsolescence first, because those are pretty easy to swap out without touching wiring. Next, we tackled electrical infrastructure. So the plant was just too old, too complicated to do a complete rewire. I mean, you'd have to bring the plant down for months, if not a year, to do that. So we had to use the original cabling, and essentially myself and several other engineers did a lot of trips up there to identify wires to the devices in the field, label them. So once that we go to unhook them and put them on new panels, we could do it very quickly in their downtime, update their networks. And it's kind of a complicated story to tell, but I guess what we did was we attacked things in the right order. And after about 5 years, so ending in 2012, 2013, we had them complete plant from a control system perspective, documented in new IO panels, had all the process code documented in a functional specification, which they didn't have. I mean, we essentially had to reverse engineer everything they had, which is basically opening things up, reading them, tracing all the wires. And in our process, we eliminated a ton of technical debt, as I call it.
That sounds like it was pretty rewarding once it was done. Hairy, but rewarding.
It's actually my favorite career story. At the time, I guess it felt stressful, but now I can see it back as I think a lot of control systems engineers would relate that it's a giant puzzle. Yeah. It's just a puzzle. You got to figure out, how do I break this thing down into chunks that we can actually chew with the resources we're given, whether it's time, schedule, money, etc.
What advice would you give a prospective customer researching automation / controls engineers or system integrators?
That is a tough question to put it in language that they can use And for me, I would lean on CSI, start there, find certified systems integrators. Getting certified with CSIA is arguably like a ISO 9000 equivalent to integrators. Some integrators are ISO 9000 certified, but some bare minimum certification, they're following some best practices. And then specifically that's a quick trick, but the key topics is the control system integrator, are they financially stable? What are their project management workflows? That's where a ton of companies fall apart. Do they have example work they can show you? Can you show us some of your design deliverables? Can we talk to one of your clients that you've done more than one project for? Show us your standard documentation suite. It probably sounds pretty involved, but you could put all that information collection on them. And I think most people would find they could filter out quite a few people just through those interactions. I mean, you'll get some people that won't respond to you, period. You might get some other people that aren't as well organized or don't have a lot to show you. And those are kind of the clues. Someone who's got their act together, boom, here you go. We have this conversation all the time.
I've had a couple of CSI members, certified members, say that the best practices and certification really helped them be prepared to face this pandemic. Would you say the same was true for enterprise?
Absolutely. March 18th, our county issued I can't remember what you call it, some kind of standing order for shutting non-essential businesses down. And our county actually got it wrong. The way they originally wrote it, way more businesses than they intended started shutting down. And we responded to that initially. And I think it was like 4 or 5 p.m. that day. We announced it to staff, said, grab your monitors. The IT team's going to stand up a couple RDS servers. We have remote capabilities already. We just didn't have it for a team of 29. But really, we have a draft disaster recovery plan, and we've been through a few iterations of it. 2017 was our first year being certified, and we had started it as part of that effort. And some of the evolution and investments we made in creating that plan, both on the policy side, but also our IT infrastructure, really put us in a position to get 29 people up and running pretty quick. And I know 29 is not a big number. It's a big, there's a lot of different companies in CSI. That's a huge number for some people. It's nothing compared to others. But for a company that is not remote work based, we switched to remote work based in a matter of hours. I think it was that Thursday. So it was the next day after I was working from home, and most of my tools worked. And we talked to most of the engineers. They were able to get to their files. They had dual monitor. Most of them brought it home. And I actually kind of reflected, like, this is amazing. This is not a major disruption, like a week or two, maybe even longer, right? Like, oh, our internet's not fast enough. Oh, the office router doesn't have enough bandwidth. Oh, we don't have enough virtual machines. And we didn't have any of that. And nice. A lot of it's just from those investments, best practices, and kind of managing risk for business continuity in general. If things go wrong, firm our size, that's a lot of people getting paychecks that aren't able to produce. And we've had an air conditioner accidentally flood our server room once. We've had an office break-in. So we kind of had been exposed that there are random events. We never would have predicted this one, but it can interrupt your business just like that.
Are you one of the 78% of CSIA members who said they wanted cybersecurity training? Well, now you've got it. CSIA has partnered with ISA to bring you a series of online courses that will get you the skills and expertise that are in high demand. This series will be offered throughout 2020 and is designed to prepare you for Cybersecurity Fundamentalist Specialist and Risk Assessment Specialist exams to earn certificates 1 and 2 of 4 that ultimately leads to the Cybersecurity Expert Badge. Best of all, you can access the material anywhere and anytime. To find out more, visit www.controlsys.org/cyber2020. Why not make this the year you earn your cybersecurity badges? I guarantee you won't regret it. What would you say the biggest benefit of CSIA membership is for enterprise?
This is another opportunity to get philosophical on my part, but after I was thinking about this a little, I think for me it gives us a structure to shoot for excellence. that's always our target. But then when you get down to it, well, what does it mean to be excellent? How am I going to do that? What's the implications to the business, to the people who work in it, to our clients? And, CSIA best practices follow the major functions of a business specific to control systems. And it's all about how to run your business better. So it gives us that structure, but it's also the network. The network's a big piece. And the more I've gone to conferences and the longer I've been involved in the community, the richer that's gotten through getting to know people. And you just, even the basics help of knowing there's someone out there who has faced the same problem you are, or has already, or is facing it, or you can predict is about to face it, right? Based on your business size, based on the market you're in, the technologies you use. And then just being able to borrow ideas. We have a lot of very cool things about the company that ultimately came from CSIA circles, whether it's individuals we know or seeing presentations at the conferences. So it's been a huge benefit.
So speaking of the conference, I know you were scheduled to present a session at the 2020 Executive Conference in May, which, as we all know, like so many other events, unfortunately had to be canceled. How did that session come about, and what would you have covered in your talk?
Yeah, so I'm part of a group we call the Future Leaders. We call it the Future Leaders Group. It's not formally a committee yet, but we may head that way. Essentially, Brad Peastrup, the Chief Revenue Officer from TSI Controls, he got to chatting with Jose quite a few years ago about his ideas about, how does the CSIA community provide for continuity as the years go by, new people come in. And so it started this idea, and he essentially, I think it was Jose, paired Brad with some of the Rising Star Award winners to form a group to start to brainstorm that topic. And so I think 2017 was the first year, and we came up with a program, and there wasn't enough spots. That was a hot conference. And then the next year, Jose gave us a speaking spot, which is really cool. And I used that to have a forum. And so this year, we started to shape what the purpose of our committee is a little more. And one thing we want to do is encourage more companies to bring their up-and-comers. And one way we thought we can do that is to provide content to help develop that audience. Because I think what's not known is if you bring an up-and-comer, you can do a lot for that person through the ideas they get, the extra confidence they build. One of the future leader guys, Steve Pongren, even said just the fact that his company sponsored him in that, just that message alone, like, we're going to sponsor you, you're going to go to this conference, was pretty important to him. And I definitely agreed with that. So my session was formed in that vein of what can we do? What subject can we discuss that, an up and comer would really identify with? And it's pretty common in business to promote your best, especially in engineering, promote your best technical person into management. And management and engineering are grossly different jobs. And a lot of businesses, I don't think, directly manage that transition, both in developing the skills, setting expectations. And so the talk was going to use people that were, let's say, midway in this transition, far enough along that they can identify with those concepts and reflect on their lessons learned. And we were just going to explore that topic as a means for the audience to, like I said earlier, relate to, get some tips out of, predict what's coming up. Because if you're an up-and-comer in the CSI circle, which is, it's not an engineering conference, it's for business management. So, but most people, I'd say most of the control systems integrator attendees were engineers at some point.
We should mention too, for those that may not know, Jose is Rivera, who's the CEO of CSIA. I know he's super popular. Every time I go with him, it's like walking around with celebrity. People are stopping him and shaking his hand and wanting to say hi. But there may be people listening who don't know who Jose.
Yeah, sorry about that context. And
okay.
I kind of lost my point, but wrapping it up, it's if you bring it up a comer to CSI, it's very likely they already have, or they're going to have people under them in some capacity. So the subject felt very relevant. And I ran it across the peers, and they also said, yeah, that would be a really good one.
Finally, what's the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
I'll just dive right into this. Everyone's got their versions of this. I think mine is a lot of don't beat yourself up stories. And, those stories, I'm in a coaching group about emotional intelligence, and they would argue, they argue all the time that people generally find a job that best suits them. And I think I fall in that category. When I came into control systems, I largely served the water, wastewater industry right from the beginning, just because I started working for Scott Pickford at Hins at the time. And those were the jobs that our branch was winning. A lot of rehabilitation work. And as a new engineer, not familiar with the world, I just did not understand what I was looking at. Systems with no documentation, really not built very well, not organized. And I didn't even know that at the time. I just didn't know what I was looking at. And I think a lot of times I was telling myself, oh, you got to catch up. You got to learn more. You don't understand this system. And then I can just see looking back, like, no, this thing was built in a barn burner, and this isn't your fault at all. In fact, you have skills you don't know yet that are going to make you exceptional at unwinding these kind of puzzles. I tell myself that. I tell myself, you joined a craft that anyone can join, regardless of being certified, qualified. There's excessive confidence everywhere, and this is your value opportunity. Programmers who you don't understand, who have all the confidence in the world, many of them don't know what they're doing. and that work product is what this looks like, Chris. So calm down a little. Don't worry about reading that much stuff on the side. But yeah, keep doing that. That'll pay off some. And then I would also tell myself that what I did was unique. It's not taught in school. Things like courage, organization, having quality control practices, identifying risks, taking actions to do something about them, and having some fear of not getting it right. Those can be healthy things. And I didn't realize I had those strengths at the time, but it's a good thing because it's put me in a position to develop others, because I can think back and then I can think of these traits I see. And we hire a lot of entry-level people, and I can help build them up faster. So it's all a good thing in the end.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you're interested in learning more about Chris or enterprise automation, you can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.CSIAexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Chris, for joining me today.
Thank you, Lisa. It's fun.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.